Hello and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Teresa Castro, and I'm a proud alumna and staff member in UNC's Office of Alumni Relations. Thank you all so much for joining us today for the Alumni Career Panel, Careers in Advocacy. Today, we will learn from and connect with fellow UNC Bears working in this industry. Before I introduce you to our panelists, I would like to share a few housekeeping items. First, this event will be recorded and will be available on demand a week from today on our alumni website. I will post the link in the chat. Two, I invite you all to start building your network and reach out to our panelists after the event. I will make sure to post their contact information in the chat towards the end of this virtual event. And three, I will go off screen after introductions and will return at the end of the event to provide a closing statement. As we highlight the careers of these alumni, I invite students, fellow staff, and faculty to ask questions via the Q&A feature. Now, please help me in welcoming our panelists. Panelists, please introduce yourself by stating your name, pronouns, title, your organization, the UNC degree you received, and a little bit about yourself. Michael, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Michael Kiavi Anderson. Kiavi is my Hawaiian name. I'm a 1980 graduate of UNC. I had from a master's degree program there. My master's was in business administration. Today, I am the director of advocacy for Nakapuna Companies, where frankly, my part of advocacy is going to the Hill and advocating for things for small business.
Thank you, Michael. Tangier, how about we go to you next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tangier Barnes-Wright. I graduated in 2005 with a degree in Africana Studies and a minor in Environmental Studies. I am currently the Senior Partnership and Program Manager at People for Bikes, where I manage the Better Bike Share Partnership. It's a collaborative made up of a couple of different organizations, and our mission is to ensure that there is equity in shared micromobility, specifically bike share, making sure that people of color and those living on lower incomes can access bikes and scooters as a way of transportation.
Thank you, Tangier. Tia, would you like to go next?
Hi, my name is Tia. I graduated in 2018 from the University of Northern Colorado. I got my major in human services and a minor in criminal justice. Right now, I'm a pretrial victim advocate for Denver Police Department, the Department of Safety. I work with primarily domestic violence victims and family violence victims. And then, I'm sorry, what else was I supposed to say?
I think that's it. You got it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tia. Chris, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, good evening. I'm Chris Lepori, he, him, his. I am a 2001 graduate of the University of Northern Colorado in communications. Although I spent really 1989 to 1994 at UNC and came back a few years, well, almost 8 years later, and finished my degree in 2001. And now am the Vice President of U.S. State Affairs for Johnson & Johnson, live in Washington, D.C., and left Colorado about 12 years ago, and have been working to get back there every day since.
Thank you, Chris. And Tammy, why don't you close us out?
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me today. My name is Tammy Ortiz, and my pronouns are she, her, her, and they, them, theirs. I am a 2019 graduate of UNC with my bachelor's in sociology, and then I received my master's in 2021 in sociology. I have two advocacy positions. I work full-time as an analyst for Ithaca S&R. We are a research-based organization that works to ensure that marginalized communities have access to post-secondary education. My team specifically works to create access to persons that are incarcerated. We work to create access to higher education for those individuals. And then I also work part-time for the Alabama Prison Arts and Education Project. We are a higher education prison program that brings our program's college degrees from Auburn University into the Alabama prison system. During COVID, we weren't able to go into the prisons, and so they created a newsletter called The Warbler. And so I am the editor of a Warbler. I have 2 interns that gather all the information for our newsletter, and we publish once a week, and they go, currently I'm sending emails to probably 250 individuals, and then they print out the newsletters, and then we go around the world. So that's, I think, how I got, yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tammy. And now I will hand it over to Imani to introduce herself and also to continue to facilitate this afternoon. Thank you.
Awesome. Super happy to be moderating this conversation with you all today. So like Teresa said, my name is Imani Limburg. I use she, her pronouns. I am still currently at the University of Northern Colorado. So I did graduate in 2020 with a bachelor's in psychology and a bachelor's in criminology and criminal justice. And I currently serve as the Assistant Director of Advocacy Services. So you can find me in Cassidy Hall, where I oversee the Assault Survivors Advocacy Program on campus. So it is our program on campus that provides support to survivors of gender-based violence. And so with that, we would just go ahead and kick off the Q&A. And so Michael, this first question will be for you. So how did your experiences at UNC help you launch into your career and or support your passion for advocacy?
Well, my degree was a master's degree. It's a master's program in business administration. It was through the United States Air Force, and it was an off-campus engineering degree that I got there. Now, the rest of the story is when I was at the Air Force Academy, and I graduated from there in '75, my girlfriend was at UNC. So I spent a lot of weekends up there. So I'm very familiar with the odors that are there from Montfort. So which ties everybody, it's a link for everybody, right? That being said, it was a very fast-paced engineering degree, but I escaped with that. And I wanted to get into something that I thought I would enjoy. And management was something that I enjoyed. It was extremely challenging. It was fast-paced. There were exceptional professors that came to our base to do that from UNC. And it was excellent preparation for management, just not businesses, but also projects. The key thing there was it was important to get an understanding of some of the critical thinking skills that's required of you in management, and that interplay of data that has in when you're trying to make those decisions, right, in the decision making. So today, a significant portion of what I do is based on interpersonal relationships. But the fact is, for policy advocacy on the Hill or in legislation changes, staffers on the Hill are looking for data. They're looking to understand not just the issue, but they're also looking for the play on data in that issue. And you've got to be able to help them, even though they're experts in their field. So they're going to expect you to be able to think critically about what you're doing and provide both quantifiable data and evidence to support your argument. UNC master's degree provided a basis for that.
Awesome, Michael. Thank you so much for sharing. Tangier, would you like to share next?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think of, so many experiences at UNC helped prepare me to do what I'm doing today. But 2 stand out. And one of those was my involvement with the Center for Human Enrichment, or CHE, and then also my involvement with the on-campus cultural centers. And of course, my degree program, which was Africana Studies. Being involved, so I worked at the Center for Human Enrichment, which at the time was where the tutoring center, there was academic advising through the Center for Human Enrichment. And through that experience, I learned the importance of providing support and creating a family and community, especially for first-generation college students. So that's one example of how I was prepared to become an advocate. And then also the cultural centers on campus are this incredible unique opportunity to engage again with sort of this family that's a home away from home. I grew up in Greeley. My parents lived 2.5 miles away from campus, but I found this second home with the cultural centers. And so again, it showed me the importance of building family outside of what somebody is used to calling their home, and how that helps set students up for success, and those who might just be having a difficult time pursuing something new. yeah, so the creation of family and community through Center for Human Enrichment and through the cultural centers. Of course, then I had this entire family through the Africana Studies department. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes, that home away from home is always so important. Tia, we'll go over to you next.
Yeah, so UNC prepared me for, my career advocacy through ASAP, actually, the Assault Survivor Advocacy Program. I was actually a volunteer advocate through them as well. Me and Imani crossed over with that. But they presented to, I believe it was my gender studies class, my sophomore year. And I'd always known that I wanted to help people. I just didn't know in what capacity I wanted to do that in. So they presented, they let me know everything they do. And I was like, hey, I'm actually really interested in that. So I signed up and I became a volunteer advocate. We went through 40 hours of training. Just really, that really stuck home with me that this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So it just kind of left off from there. I was able to get a internship through the Colorado Organization for Victim Assistance, or COVA. They actually helped me get a paid internship with the Weld County District Attorney's Office and their Victim Witness Assistant Unit. So I was able to do 450 hours of my internship through them, as well as at ASAP while being a volunteer advocate too. And if anyone knows Angie, I still helped out even after I graduated. So that set me up tremendously. I gained so much experience through ASAP and my internship as well. It really helped a lot.
Awesome. And yes, always a big fan of an Angie shout out. Chris, we'll pass it over to you.
Very good. Thank you. For me, sort of a seminal moment was I got real involved in student government when I was at the University of Northern Colorado. And with that had the privilege of serving as the student trustee, serving on the board of trustees at the university. And at the time, that responsibility also served as a liaison to the Colorado Student Association, which was this nonprofit organization that represented college and university students from across the state of Colorado at the state legislature in Denver, and advocating on issues like tuition control and admission requirements and graduation requirements and things of that sort, and served on the board of directors for that organization. And when I graduated from college, when I graduated from UNC, I thought I was going to go into HR. I wanted to do conflict resolution, alternative dispute resolution, labor relations, those kinds of things. And at the time, that Colorado Student Association needed an executive director. And so I decided to apply for the executive director job at that nonprofit, and I didn't get it. And I thought, my goodness, okay, that's a sign. I'm going to go into HR. 2 weeks later, that organization came back and said, the person that we offered it to turned it down, and we'd like to offer the job to you. And that moment for me set in motion now a 29-year career in advocacy. If that person hadn't decided to turn that job down, I would have taken a totally different turn in my career, had a different career in, I think, in many, many ways. So, but it all started at UNC and serving on in student government, serving on the board of trustees, and at this small little nonprofit advocacy organization called the Colorado Student Association.
Awesome, Chris. That was such a great story. Tammy, we'll go over to you now.
Awesome, thank you. I have so many amazing experiences at UNC. I also hold an identity as a person that has been incarcerated. And so I knew once I was released from prison that I was going to have to do something different with my life. I knew that if I, not for guilt or anything like that, but my life changed. And so I knew that if I had been ripped from my children's lives, that there was going to be a reason for it. And so I chose to pursue my education. And UNC just warmly like embraced me. I was an older non-traditional student, which is hard enough anyway. But I was able to find spaces on campus, the cultural and resource centers, the student government. I served as the election parliamentarian for 3 years, and just different spaces that I can volunteer at. I'm still active on the campus with different things. And so I think just the embrace that UNC gave me, it's hard to share some of our identities and to be accepted, like totally changed my whole life. I think if I would have been negatively impacted at all, I wouldn't have continued my education. So I appreciate the warmness that I received. My program also worked, is a research-based program, my master's in sociology. And so with the experience that I gained from gathering research, doing interviews, different things like that, helped the work that I do now. It wasn't exactly the same once you get into a job. I think we learn a lot more once we get out. But again, being an older person, but having that experience and having the felony conviction on my background, that experience from UNC gave me the confidence that I needed to pursue this and to know that I wanted to change the lives in the system. So, yeah.
Awesome, Tammy. Thank you so much for sharing. I really love hearing about kind of all of the different spaces that you all were involved with while you were students here. And yeah, kind of going off of what Tia had said during her answer. So I was also an advocate with ASAP. I joined fall of 2017 and stayed up until May of 2020 when I graduated. And so obviously now I oversee the Assault Survivors Advocacy Program. So for me, it's kind of a very clear trajectory of kind of how I have ended up in my role. But with that, we'll go on to the next question. So many students may feel overwhelmed by the multitude of social and political issues prevalent today. What advice do you have for students on identifying their passion and purpose within the advocacy landscape, and how can they channel their energy effectively to create meaningful impact without burning out? And Tangier, we'll start with you for this question.
Thank you. And I know we're not supposed to go back because we have limited time, but I just want to uplift everything everybody said about student government, which reminded me of my time on the Student Representative Council. And again, just these places where I was able to advocate for students on campus, and advocating to keep the cultural centers freestanding institutions. We had this group and had to do that. Well, anyway, incredible opportunities with the resource centers on campus. I'm going to focus on, for the next question, advice for identifying your passion and purpose within the advocacy landscape. I'll try to hit on channeling your energy effectively. I would say, what ignites emotion when you hear it, when somebody tells you something, when you read something, whether it's happiness or whether it's anger. Those are kind of cues to, oh, maybe is that a passion for you? And maybe that's what you pursue. What shocks you? What has shocked you this week that you've learned that maybe you didn't know, or just for some reason it was presented a different way and you glommed onto it and had some sort of visceral reaction to it? These are ways that we identify what our passion is and the direction that we can take in advocacy. I was shocked to learn that communities of color were more burdened by toxic waste facilities, and went down this rabbit hole of environmental justice because of an environment, politics, and law class that I took at UNC. And that completely set me on my trajectory towards environmental justice and social justice work. Because I listened to what my body was telling me when I was reading this information. As far as how to channel your energy so that you don't burn out, I think before I knew what self-care was, I was practicing that. I think that in the last handful of years, self-care has become more, there's a name for it. I didn't have a name for it when I was going to school, but I have always made sure that, because in order to take care of other people and advocate and uplift other people's voices, you got to take care of yourself and make sure that you are centered and staying healthy mentally, physically, and spiritually. Also, let the haters roll off your shoulder. People will question what you're doing and, oh, are you going to be beating your head up against a wall your whole life? Are you sure you want to do that? Yes. And I think everybody beats their head up against a wall at some point in their career. At least I decided to do it helping improve the quality of life for people of color and low-income people, making this world a better place. So I think self-care, not taking things personally has gone a long way, and keeping your eye on your values, and why you decided, where did that passion initially come from, and how were you ignited, and continue to go back there and connect with people who are in your field doing what you're doing. Find them wherever they are.
Awesome. Yes, I love that piece about revisiting what ignited that passion to begin with. I think in this work that is so important. Tia, we'll go over to you now.
Yes, so kind of what Tangier was saying at the first part of that question, identifying your passion and purpose. So just discovering what truly resonates with you, what really sits with you, and knowing what's your purpose for it, with that issue or topic. Is it something you're hoping to change, or are you just looking to, lessen a burden for other people, to support them within that issue or topic? Kind of recognizing what is that for you? I mean, also, really discussing with yourself, are you okay without recognition? I'm sorry, I said that completely wrong, but y'all know what I'm saying. Are you okay without being recognized for it, or without having the thank yous? Because sometimes advocacy is a thankless job. That's just how it can be sometimes. And you kind of have to sit and not just be okay with it, and still know that you're doing your part. Because I know for me, when it came to the type of work that I'm doing, I work with domestic violence victims and family violence victims, and it can be a cycle, and it can be a little difficult, not only for the victim survivors going through it, but also the workers. Because we have conversations, we want people to always better themselves, to be safe, to be happy, but we can't force anybody to do that. So it's just really sitting in that and making sure that whatever you do decide to do, that you are passionate about it, that you go back to your why, and figure out, okay, I'm okay with this. I had a moment. Let me speak with my coworkers. Let me speak to, whoever is kind of like your outlet and can bring you back to reality in that space. And I think that kind of goes along with without burning out, being okay with, I didn't get thanked today, but I know I did great. Just finding out what is it for you that's going to continue this work, because it's not easy, but it's definitely rewarding.
I love that response too. Chris, we'll pop it over to you.
Great. Yeah. I really like what both Tangier and Tia had to say. And, maybe since Tia focused on the first part of that question, I'll focus on the back part of that question about, managing your energy, and working to not burn out, committing to not burn out. And I would just say, it can be heavy sometimes, the work that you do in advocacy, that you carry those, that experience home with you, that, for many people, the work that we do in advocacy, it's because we have a passion about the issue that we are advocating on. So really important to find hobbies, channels outside of work, right? Have friends, have hobbies that are outside of your regular work. I love to trail run, being a Coloradan, although living in Washington, D.C. now, going out, being with nature, hearing the dirt under your feet, reconnecting. That is, especially in a world of politics where it feels so you know, it can feel personal yet disconnected, right? Where, you know, you can feel tremendous amount of pressure. So, and then, yeah, being able to have conversations with people, friends, that has nothing to do with work, has nothing to do with, you know, what you experience, you know, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., right? So, yeah, I would just really encourage you to find those outlets that give you space from your advocacy work.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much for sharing. Tammy, we'll pop over to you now.
Thanks, Imani. I think I was able to identify my passion and what I wanted to do once I graduated. My work is very personal to me, and so I knew that I wanted to get involved in the prison reform, prison industry at some point. I didn't want to work in a prison or anything like that, but I wanted to get involved with changing the system, or I'm an abolitionist, so actually, you know, abolishing the system. And so I knew that's what I wanted to do, but that I loved working with students. The work that I did on campus, you know, being a student, working at the centers, different things like that. I wanted to be able to maybe combine the two. And that's kind of what I've been able to do is I work with students that are incarcerated, and I'm able to advocate for them. And also I'm able to feel like I'm contributing to my end goal. And so as far as channeling that energy, I think for me, self-care, I think kind of like Tangier said, I don't know if I knew exactly what self-care was, but for me right now, the biggest thing that I've been doing is advocating more for myself, being willing to share my identity. It's a very vulnerable identity and not always something that I love to share, but I know that the more people that I talk to about it, the more awareness that is created. And so advocating for myself, a lot of organizations right now, especially in the industry that I'm in, are working to hire more individuals that have been incarcerated. And I think not always prepared to handle the trauma that comes with hiring people that have been incarcerated. We have a lot of PTSD, a lot of just things that aren't always, I mean, I think institutions can be better at how we work with individuals anyway, but especially with this population, there's a lot that we don't know because we just haven't, like, there's been so many barriers to employment for us. I also, but advocating for myself. And so if, you know, if things are happening at work, we recently instituted a humanizing language at work where we're using more first person language so that instead of, you know, calling someone a former offender or a convict or an inmate, we're working, you know, we're using words like students that have been incarcerated or patrons that have been incarcerated, or just words, understanding how much words used. And I was able to advocate for that policy change within my organization. So that was exciting. And so I think for me, advocating for myself has been the biggest self-care that I've been practicing most recently. I also have 3 grandchildren and they are my self-care. And so they live in town, I'm able to see them. I live in Greeley. And so being able to see them as often as I can. And I love water aerobics. So as often as I can get to the water, like it's totally stuff outside of work where I don't have to think about all the everything in the world. Those are my biggest ways that I can unwind. Definitely. Thank you.
Awesome, Tammy. Thank you so much for sharing. And also thank you for sharing your experience with us as well. And I also like how you highlighted also doing that like internal advocacy, because obviously we do outward advocacy, but also we are oftentimes advocating within our own organizations and things that we work for as well. With that, we'll pass it over to Michael.
So I have some very practical applications, right? But one of the things the thing that resonates me with here is all the self-care that's been discussed and so forth. Don't forget, because you can get so passionate about advocating for something or somebody or a cause or whatever, you'll lose yourself in it. You will lose yourself, you'll lose your family, you'll lose everything. And that awareness goes away because you're so ingrained in it, you got to get away from it. And I mean, just get away from it. And by the way, if you expect relief from your boss, most of them don't have a clue of what you're doing. I go to the Hill and there's this it's making sausage. People don't want to know how sausage is made. They think it's some glamorous, glorious way that the legislation comes together. It's either in the back rooms or it's some formal process. No, it's about relationships and talking and boom and being involved. And oh my gosh, you don't have time. You don't have time for yourself. You can end up not having time for yourself. So you got to make time for yourself. So 3 steps. Somebody focus on the back end. How you channel the energy? 3 steps. Number 1, own it. Own it. This is your passion. Don't let anybody take it away from you. It is your passion. It was gifted to you. It was given to you. Nobody has a right to do that. Not your spouse, not your mom and dad, not your best friend, whatever, not your partner. Nobody has. You're the only one that can make decisions. Second, believe it. Fully understand your passion. I think Tia brought that up. It's just getting to understand and really dig into that passion. And then, because why do you feel, ask the why. That's the question. Ask the why. And then define it. And what I like to do is if you go to my LinkedIn page, it tells you right up front. It's visible to the whole world. Why? Because I want the world to know. But B, I want to be accountable to that. I want folks to know I see it. I have it written, in my bathroom this is what you do. This is what you're doing. But I want the rest of the world to see that so that they know what I do and I'm held accountable. Third, most importantly, you cannot succeed alone. There's no way you're going to do this by yourself. There's no way. And, so whatever you need that kind of helps you, it takes a manifestation of people, resources, and circumstances to be successful. Without those, and then I'm not one of those that believes, I'm sorry, I don't believe in chance. Things happen for a reason. Things come into your life for a reason. Be open to those things that manifest for you because they've been placed there for you to kind of believe that. Chris brought that up, right? I mean, Chris went, I'm done. I'm going to go to HR. No, done, not done. Come back. You're still up for Chris, and he's back to this. So I think those are the 3 things. Own it, believe it, and then remember you can't succeed by yourself. Okay.
Michael, we got to get that on a t-shirt or something. That was great. Awesome. So next question. The landscape of policy and advocacy is constantly evolving. How do you stay informed about the latest developments and changes in policies or regulations that impact the causes you advocate for? And how do you adapt your advocacy strategies to these changes? And Tia, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so a lot of the time, I would say just within my workplace, they send us a lot of updates, especially when the laws change around the Victim Rights Act, because those are important things that we need to know. So when it comes to that, I'll definitely, read those, of course, but then they also offer a lot of just optional trainings through various different organizations, victim-centered. So I'll take advantage of that as much as I can, go into those trainings. I went to the COVA conference last year, and that was really fun. It's up in Keystone, and it was a lot of different workshops and everything that we were able to go through. Our job allowed us to do that and kind of paid our way there. So it was nice to have that opportunity to take advantage of that. And of course, not something you have to do, but it's something I wanted to do just to make sure that I'm still learning. Because in this job, you never just know everything. So you still have to continue to build up that knowledge. Then also sometimes I'll look up like random things, random articles. I guess this comes with self-care, so make sure to cut it off at some point. Don't work all day. But also like look up just random things or just like personal stories from other people that have gone through these type of experiences, just to make sure I'm checking myself and still can empathize with those that I'm speaking with. So that's how I kind of do that as well.
Yeah, Tia, thank you so much for sharing that. I think conferences are definitely a super awesome way to kind of keep that learning going. And Chris, we'll go over to you.
Yeah, I have responsibility for the U.S. states, so 50 states, tens of thousands of bills that are introduced in states across the country. How do you cut through those and figure out which ones really are going to move, which ones really impact the issues of interest, on behalf of the organization that you represent, and then how do you effectuate them? There's a lot, right? So you have to rely, we've come to learn, we rely heavily on technology. Like I started back in a day when you would walk into the bill room and you'd get this analog piece of paper and you'd go down the list and see what bills were introduced that day. And then you'd ask for a hard copy version of the bill and you'd have to read the bill. Like now there's technology that allows you to search for, certain key terms. There's predictive analytics that say, based upon this bill being introduced by these sponsors at this point in the process with this kind of substance and subject matter, it has an X amount likelihood of passing. So there's great analytical tools and technology that help you sort of navigate the policy and advocacy world today. I think digital and social media is another major component of what we have to do today, figuring out like, how do we get share of voice? How do you break through that? How do you ensure that you're targeting the right policymakers with the right message? And how do you break through? How do you break through that? How do you engage your own advocates? How do you mobilize? How do you communicate, educate, inform, activate, and mobilize your own constituency and helping them to effectuate change? Again, technology has allowed us to do things that would have been impossible to do before, or certainly at the speed in which we're able to deploy that kind of capability today. So, and looking to use those resources, what I would also say is that necessity is the mother of invention, as they like to say, right? And that be creative. It doesn't, honestly, it doesn't, you don't have to have all the resources in the world. It's be creative and think through, how can we craft a solution based, with the resources we have on the issues that we're facing. So, and technology, I think, is getting more and more available sort of, across the board. It is it's sort of the capability is, in fact, you see a lot of nonprofit organizations that are way better at this kind of capability than, more sophisticated corporations are, right? So, and that's, again, where I go to, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, thank you so much for that response, Chris. I also really like what you were saying about really utilizing the resources that we do have. Again, I think in these roles, we often do have limited resources. And so really going as far as we can with what we are given. Tammy, we'll pop over to you.
Well, thanks, Imani. For me, I think I attend a lot of webinars. I work remotely, so I'm able to do everything from home, but I love a good conference. I love to get out and see people because I don't get to do that very much at home. I was able to go to Atlanta last week and attend the National Conference for Higher Education Prison Programs. And so I was able to interact with programs, with persons that have been incarcerated, students that have been incarcerated, and learn about the research that they're doing. Pell Grants was removed from, so students in prison were not allowed to access Pell Grants. Back in the 90s, it was taken away and it was actually reinstated this summer. And so we have a lot of organizations. So students, once again, are allowed to access those grants. And we have a lot of organizations, colleges and universities that are maybe working to implement new programs. And so learning from them while also giving my own insight into what I've learned about HEPs while doing this job has helped me to be able to keep up with the advocacy. So a lot of webinars, a lot of Zoom meetings, conferences I love. And then I think also just learning from others. While I was a student at UNC, I was involved in a lot of spaces where it wasn't maybe my main identity or an identity that I held, but I learned how to listen and I learned how to learn from these spaces so that I could better be an advocate or an accomplice for these spaces. And so I think for me, just listening and kind of like Tia said, I read a lot. And so there's always an interesting article that I like to read because there's so much happening in the world. And then just making sure that I'm keeping my mind open to new ideas because a lot of times we can close off to things and we're not always doing the best advocacy work. So I think for me, that's probably how I keep involved.
Awesome, Tammy. Thank you so much. Michael, we'll go over to you.
There we go. I figured it. I got the button. It was just hard to put it right on there. So what I heard from Tia was never stop learning. What I heard from Chris was use technology. What I heard from Tammy was Tammy loves to go to conferences. So do I. That's a great thing to do, right? Who doesn't, right? If I were to say the most important, I had a list of things, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to repeat what everybody say because that's what's in here. I would say prioritize. It's part of that self-care. Because for me, it's like squirrel. Oh, okay. Let's go over here. Squirrel. Oh, back over here. It's so easy with all the information and this little tool that we get, right? That's in our hands. I mean, how many of you have sat at dinner with your partner, spouse, whatever, and you're suddenly going, oh, squirrel. You know what? Prioritize both your time. Yeah. Here, ditto, make sure you prioritize your time and the topics that you're going to go after, because Tammy is right. There is so much information out there. If you were to try to scarf all that information together, it's easy to become divergent in what you're trying to do. And the truth of the matter, as an advocate, you've got to be convergent into the topic that you're going after, particularly in this case. So that's all I would add to that. Thank you.
Awesome, Michael. Thank you so much. And Tangier.
I'm going to add it. Well, so I work for People for Bikes, right, which is a national bike advocacy organization, and I manage the Better Bike Share Partnership. People for Bikes is a very smart sort of way of following legislation that's being run from DC through all the states. We have lobbyists in DC, we have staff who track policies and bills that are not bike friendly. We help local government and local advocacy organizations run their own policy and write policy and get bike friendly policy up for a vote. So that's People for Bikes. Better Bike Share Partnership is my everyday. And the way I learn about what is relevant or what the current needs are for the shared micromobility industry, I do that by Google Alerts, which goes back to the reading, constantly reading, and prioritizing though, being like, hey, we're not directly working on that. Let me stick here. But having phone calls with people, like actual phone calls with people or video calls with not just colleagues, but with the people who are operating bike share systems, with the people who are using bike share systems, and constantly staying in touch with what they are experiencing, so that as a funder, as somebody who convenes the industry and produces best practices, we know what is happening, what's being done well, and what is still not happening in the world of shared micromobility. How else do I stay on top of things? Conferences, yes, and I'm lucky enough to be in a space where I get help put on national conferences. I'm using my notes from the North American Bike Share and Scooter Share Association folks. We adapt based on feedback we receive, but we still have the same mission, right? Which is to increase access to shared micromobility for people of color and lower income communities. And, within that, we hear, oh, people still don't have a good way to pay if they don't have a smartphone, or as for example. And so how can we help support communities and organizations trying to get more people on bikes?
Thank you so much, Tangier, for sharing. And I really like the piece that you just mentioned of kind of tapping into folks who are doing not exactly the same thing that you're doing, but folks that are working in that same space. And I feel like that really ties us into our next question of why is networking important in your field, and how do you build or strengthen your networks? And we will start with Chris.
Great. I like to replace the term networking with relationships. And, when I think about literally every job I have had, from the very first job I had taking out trash at the frame up store in Bittersweet, to working at Little Caesars, to the Colorado Student Association, and every job I've had in my profession, it's all been because I've had a relationship with somebody who was at that place. Literally every job I've had in my life. And so I'm a huge believer and an advocate in building meaningful, authentic, genuine relationships. And one of the ways in advocacy you do that is by, if Washington, D.C., and Michael may be able to help me some with this, Washington, D.C. tends to be a place where people ask, what can you do for me? Ask not what can you do for me, but how can I help you? What can I do for you? And I think, building relationships that are built on, how you can help others, helps to establish relationships where people feel like there's more than just a transaction, where it's more than something that it's you're getting something out of it and they're only giving to you, they're not getting anything back. So I just I would say that focus on how you can build meaningful, real relationships, and good things usually come from that.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I definitely think that reciprocity is super important. And we'll pop over to Tammy.
Well, thanks. So I think for me, the networking or creating relationships in the work that I do is important, because so many of the programs and individuals that we work with lack resources of some source, and so to be able to create those networking or connections help, so we can help each other with maybe things that we're trying to fix, or trying to have access to, or whatever that is. For me in my job, that's important. And I love people. And so for me, it helps even with my own personal life to be able to create relationships and have those people that I can look to. I had so many mentors while I was at UNC. And so I was able to learn from them, to be able to process things with them, to go to them when maybe I had a, yucky day in class or just in life in general. I had so many mentors. And for me, that was a big part of the connections. And then I think it's important to be able to share lived experiences. And so if you can make connections or network with persons that have lived experiences that have went through what you've went through, or share some identities that you own, it just helps make life a lot easier. So I think that's why I do that.
Awesome. Thank you, Tammy. We'll go over to you, Michael.
Diversity, networking. If you look at studies about how important diversity is, it's critical. It's absolutely critical in understanding the importance of diversity in organizations. Diversity is extremely important in advocacy, because whether that diversity is inclusive of race, gender, whatever those, there's that. But diversity also has to be what's going on in your head, what's going on in your mind. So I would encourage that diversity and look at, because what it helps you do. So when I was the chief of staff for Congressman Don Young from Alaska, I would watch I watched C-SPAN. Oh, great, really exciting stuff. I tell you what, C-SPAN, great stuff, right? I'd watch MSN, I'd watch Fox, and I'd watch CNN. And why? Because my congressman would sit there and go, okay, we're getting ready to go write some legislation. What's the other side going to say? I could write it. I could write you something right now that says, hey, this is what the D's are going to say. These are what the R's going to say. This is what the far left's going to say. This is what the far right's going to say. These are what the people in the middle can say. And I can write to any of those anytime. And the reason why you understand it is because you've got to be diverse in your relationship building. I definitely underscore what Chris said, that it can be transactional, but transactional has no meaning. It's boring. It's meaningless in life. It's about the relationship and really getting into the relationship with the person one-on-one and so forth. I had lunch with a bud today that I've known for 3 years now, and we went over just different legislation that's getting ready to happen, how we're going to work together on it, who our problems are going to be, and everything else. But we didn't forget to talk about his wife, Mary, and his son, John, and how he's going to college and some of the challenges he has. That's essential to the relationship thing that you have to understand. That's it.
Perfect. Tangier, we'll pop over to you.
Sure. Quickly, I would add, and I would second Chris's comment about relationship building. Relationship building equals collaboration. Collaboration, coalition building is equals better results, better policy, better legislation, more equitable outcomes. That is all.
Perfect. And then Tia, if you had anything to add to this question.
Yeah, really quickly, of course, that everyone said, I like the relationship building instead of like networking. But yeah, just relationship building, meaning make sure you're not burning bridges where you are. When you are in, a certain job position or just even out in the public, just make sure that you're showing your best self at all times, because you never know. You never know who you're speaking with, what connections they could have, what could happen. You want to be in that position where people are, coming back to you saying, hey, I remember you. Can you help me with this? Or we have a great question for this. Or we have a great position for you for this, things like that. So just always remaining your best self.
Awesome. I feel like that was definitely a good note to leave off with that question. So next one, the path to a career in advocacy can be nonlinear and require perseverance. Can you share any setbacks or challenges you faced during your advocacy journey, and how have you stayed motivated and resilient in the face of adversity? And Tammy, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you. I think some of the barriers I encountered included just access to employment. Once I graduated, it was hard to find a job, but I think it was post-COVID, so a lot of individuals were having trouble finding jobs. And so the way that I stay motivated was I just knew that this was the work that I wanted to do and that I had intended to do. I did some other little jobs in between, but just staying motivated and staying interested and staying involved, and you just keep putting yourself out there. It's hard sometimes, but just don't give up. I think that's all I would have.
Perfect. Michael?
You've got to remember that sometimes you're not going to get everything you want the first time. So you've got to be persistent. That's the other characteristic. I mean, if you want legislation where you want something built white with pink polka dots, you might want to have to settle for just white this year, and next year go for the pink polka dots. So the best way to do that, I'm not going to go, there are a ton of setbacks I've had. Oh my gosh. So I'm not going to go to that because there's hundreds of those examples, but I want to talk about how do you get through it. Just remember the 3 steps, own it, believe it, and you can't succeed alone. You can't succeed alone will really help you get it through this, because one of the places I advocate for is FASD, Fetal Alcohol Syndrome Disorder United. I'm on the board. I'm about to leave the board. What I did was a lot of policy work on the Hill for that. It's taken us 3 years to get some legislation through, and we're finally about that close. The first year, it was a heartbreak. The second year, it was another heartbreak. But then when you remember this, that we're representing thousands of families, tens of thousands of families, really, that are doing this, that you're behind, that's a pick-me-up. It's not a guilt trip. It's a pick-me-up that says, you know what, I can't leave them alone. I can't do this. And that's what I've used to go ahead and get us going, and to kind of motivate the parents and the advocates that are in like about 38 other states that we work with.
Thank you, Michael. We'll pop it over to Tangier.
I think I've said some of this as far as staying motivated and resilient in the face of adversity. I've mentioned people telling me, you're going to beat your head up against a wall your whole life. I think I would say that this work, I don't know. I don't really know if I have much to add. everybody, yeah, I don't know, but you persevere, you keep your eye, because I think I've said it, you keep your eye on why you're doing it, what your values are, and know that you're making a difference. And yeah, I mean, I think I'll kind of leave it at that. I don't want to add a bunch of stuff that isn't necessarily helpful.
No, that is perfect. And then Tia, if you had anything to add.
Yeah, I would say, after I graduated, it was hard finding advocacy jobs. I'd even applied to my internship because I happened to have an opening. Didn't get it, and I was like, well, here we are. So I ended up finding another position, but it wasn't the advocacy position that I wanted. What is the field I'm trying to go into? But I took a step back and just let myself know that this is still adding to your experience. This is still something you can learn from and apply to that advocate position when you get there. So sometimes you just, like everyone else has said, you have to stay persistent, just continue working. It took a year before I got in the position that I am now, and I've been in this position for 4 years. So you just have to continue on.
Yeah, I really love that. It's really using a setback as still a learning opportunity. And now you are in the role that you want to be in. And then we'll end with Chris for this question.
Yeah, I would just echo what everybody has said, and maybe just said in a slightly different way. Briefly, would be there is no set path, right? There is no perfect way. There are lots of ways to get where you want to be, and when one path doesn't seem right, there'll be another one. So be open. It's been said before too. So be open to opportunity.
Thank you, Chris. I think it has definitely been said, but it's always nice to have that reiterated. And so this will be the last question of the evening. Can you provide a final word of advice for UNC Bears currently seeking a job in the field of advocacy? And we will start with Michael for this question.
So I've saved this soft story, and it'll be a good story. It'll be short, and it'll be very relevant to you who live in Greeley. I traveled across the U.S. quite a bit in my military career. One of the primary ways of getting across is Interstate 70. Interstate 70 crosses right through the dead center of Colorado, as we all know. About the time you hit Lyman, you can finally see the Rocky Mountains in the distance. About the time you hit it, right? And then it starts getting bigger and bigger. It looks bigger and bigger and bigger. And the closer you get to it, and finally you are sitting there in Denver, unfortunately, but you're in Denver, and there's the mountains right there. Boom, there it is. There, all their glory. Going after a goal is kind of like that. In the distance, it appears small and not a challenge. And the closer you get to it, the bigger that challenge looks. The truth is, those mountains didn't get bigger. They're still some of the tallest mountains in the Western US. I mean, in the United States, right? They are. But they didn't get any taller. You just got closer and closer and closer to them, and they look taller. That should not keep you from climbing them when you need to. And that's the story I want to add for advocacy. Don't let mountains scare you away. Just go climb them. That'll be my words.
That was beautiful. Tangier.
Yes. Okay. I would say, Michael, we'll talk about Denver offline because I love Denver. I also grew up in Greeley. I like Greeley. I would say be prepared to, be able to clearly talk about why what you're doing matters. I experienced, numerous times people kind of dismissing advocacy work. And it was extremely helpful to key in on, that 10-second, here's what I'm doing, here's why it matters to you, here's why it should matter to you. I would also say that, I am 40 now. My friends are 40. It is becoming clear that some friends who took other career paths are spending a lot of time trying to figure out their purpose and trying to figure out if what they're doing is meaningful oh, I'm not and they don't feel like they're contributing. And so there's a lot that they're doing outside of work to try and fill that. And if anybody tries to talk you out of doing advocacy work, don't let them. Happiness, I mean, I don't know how to say this all that well, but like happiness means a lot. And the point where I'm at, I feel lucky that I don't have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out if what I'm doing makes a difference in the world. And part of it is luck, but I made some very intentional decisions about what I wanted to do, who I wanted to serve. And that is serving me well now. So if anybody tries to talk you out of it, stick with it and know why. And for those of you who are younger, know that by the time you're 40, things start to come to a head with what you're doing in life and what you're not doing. And I'm so happy that I'm here, and I'm so happy to have my colleagues here and new friends, in the advocacy space.
Tangier, I will keep that in mind when I am 40. We'll pass it over to Tia.
I would say and this is something I've always said as well, to love or enjoy what you're doing, or both. We spend majority of our lives working, so if we're going to do that, we might as well love it. So always keep that in mind, as well as realize when you need to take a step back as well. Advocacy, it's important work no matter what type of environment you go into with it. As you see here, we're all doing different things within advocacy, but it's still supporting or trying to change different issues. So just know that there's a wide variety. There's not one particular way that you need to go. And just be passionate with it, have fun with it. Make sure that, even the organizations or jobs you go into, that they are supporting you. Because it is still difficult work, and you want to make sure that the people you're working with will still have your back and want to make sure that you're okay. So just take that with you, and good luck on your journey.
Thank you, Tia. And we'll pass it over to Chris.
I love everything that's been said. I would just add, be prepared to hear no more than you hear yes. Be willing to fail. I fail every single day. I fail way more than I succeed. So don't be discouraged when you fail, and just keep grinding. Good things happen.
Awesome. And Tammy.
I think I would echo everything that everyone on the panel has shared. The only thing I think I would add is to enjoy the journey. I'm a goal-driven person. I have goals, I have ambitions, I have institutions that I want to burn to the ground. But along the way, I'm going to enjoy the journey, and I'm going to meet amazing people, and hopefully maybe interact in the future with my new friends here on this panel. And but I enjoy life. So I think that's all I would add.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like again, like Tammy said, I would really just echo everything that you all shared here today. Really enjoyed this conversation, and stay the course and don't let folks sway you. And the work is not easy, but like Tia said early on, it is worth it. And like Tammy just said, enjoy the journey.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Imani, for moderating this amazing conversation. I wish it didn't have to end because it's been so good. But again, thank you to all of our panelists, our moderator, and to all of you for joining us today. It is always an honor and a pleasure to host fellow Bears and to hear about their UNC experience, your unique identities, career paths, and industry insights. Throughout the semester, we'll be hosting virtual alumni career panels. To learn more, you can visit www.unco.edu/alumni/careers. And before we end, we have our colleagues over at the Center for Career Readiness here to share some insight into the resources they offer.
Greetings, my name is Rebecca Owens. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I'm a career counselor for the Center for Career Readiness. In our center, we offer a variety of resources that range from resume, cover letters, helping students identify what their values are, what their interests are, and connecting them to potential career pathways or potential fields of work. One of the services that we offer for students or people who are seeking to transition into different careers is um, career exploration, and specifically how to transition from one career to another. And for those who are already in the workforce, we also have um, a unique service that we help students to articulate salary negotiation and the process on how to um, hopefully get a successful salary negotiation and get whatever salary that they are looking for. Um, and we're not only just limited to those services, we also help with anything that is related to career readiness and career exploration. So if you guys have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We are happy and eager to help you meet your career readiness needs or career exploration needs.
Thank you, Rebecca. And quickly, I'll ask everyone to unmute yourself. And we'll do a quick Go Bears, and then we'll close out this evening. So 3, 2, 1,
Go
Go
Bears!
Bears!
Have a good evening.